Welcome at Zlin Ophthalmology Festival. We have prepared over 30 case report presentations for you. I would like to thank all the presenters for their contribution, and many thanks to our general sponsor Bausch & Lomb for supporting our Congress. We are looking forward to a discussion on selected case reports by international panel of distinguished experts, and there is AECOS session on high-tech IOLs. AECOS stands for American European Congress of Ophthalmic Surgery, and this session will be chaired by AECOS Europe President Eric Mertens. We have distinguished European presenters Arthur Cummings from Ireland, Francesco Carones from Italy, and Charles Dyer from UK. Let's go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eric Mertens from Antwerp, Belgium, and the President of AECOS Europe, and I would like to welcome all of my colleagues and friends on the 13th Zlin Festival of Ophthalmology online. I would especially like to thank Dr. Pavel Stodulka for inviting me once again to give an introduction to this yearly, very prestigious and outstanding Congress. For those who are not a member, it is important to know that AECOS stands for American European Congress of Ophthalmic Surgery and is a truly progressive organization that fosters communication and cooperation between leading anterior segment surgeons, ophthalmic industry executives, select venture capitalists, and technology entrepreneurs. Today, this society remains dedicated to advancing vision care and improving patients' quality of life through innovation, education, and advocacy. AECOS is also known to closely collaborate with the industry to exchange ideas and improve products for our patients and being an advocate for quality patient care. Our afternoon session is a perfect example of this and promises to be very exciting because it is about clarifying the terminology and the mode of action of different high-performance IOLs. This field is dominated by different confusing terms, which is not helpful for deciding on which premium IOL to choose for our patients. I'm pretty sure that Shiraz Daya from London, UK, Arthur Cummings from Dublin, Ireland, and Francesco Carones from Milano, Italy, will give excellent insights in how we can do a better job in explaining patients, but also help industry classifying these high-tech IOLs and how they really function in the real world. I wish you all a fruitful and interesting online ophthalmology festival, and I can't wait to welcome you again for our AECOS session starting from 5:45 p.m. Central European Time.
Good morning, good afternoon everyone. I am Luc Bonnefoy, Vice President Surgical International for Bausch & Lomb. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. It's a great pleasure, it's also an honor to be the sponsor of the Zlin Eye Festival. A nice congress, bigger and bigger every year, more and more international with real topics of interest, as well as for the ophthalmologists like for the industry. I would like to thank you, Dr. Stodulka, for this initiative and for the invite. I wish to you a very great and nice, successful Congress.
It's a great pleasure for me to introduce AECOS session as a part of our online Congress. The session will be chaired by Eric Mertens, AECOS Europe President, and this starts right now.
Okay, hello everyone. I see everyone is connected. So my pleasure to hand it over to Eric Mertens, AECOS Europe President. Eric, it's all yours.
Hello, good evening. And for those who missed me at the introduction, my name is Eric Mertens and I'm practicing in Antwerp, Belgium, and I'm the current president of AECOS Europe. AECOS stands for American European Congress of Ophthalmic Surgery, and I'd like to thank Pavel Stodulka, who celebrated his birthday yesterday, so still happy birthday, Pavel, for giving AECOS the opportunity to organize this hopefully groundbreaking session, which is a perfect example of what we stand for. And actually, it is about clarifying the terminology and the mode of action of different high-performance IOLs. This field is unfortunately dominated by different confusing terms, which are not helpful for deciding on which premium IOL to choose for our patients. And I'm pretty sure that Francesco Caronis from Milano, Italy, he's going to talk about how we can introduce this new terminology and talking to our patients, because words matter. Then Shiraz Daya from London, UK, will dive deeper into what we propose as a new classification for these advanced technology IOLs. And last but not least, Arthur Cummings from Dublin, Ireland, will also talk about our relationship with the industry and how we will ask the industry to adopt this new terminology in worldwide. So they will give us probably excellent insights in how we can do a better job in explaining patients, but also help industry classifying these high-tech IOLs and how they really function in the real world. So without further ado, I want to give first the word to Francesco Caronis with his first talk about how to talk about this new classification to our patients. So Francesco, from the very nice view from Milano, I see the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eric, and I'm sharing my presentation right now. I hope you can see it. There we are. The topic of my presentation, as you see, is first of all to try to motivate you on the importance of adopting and implementing your practice with high-performance IOLs, and why am I still using them in a significant way. I have some financial disclosures to make. I'm consulting from some of the companies involved in the presbyope-correcting IOLs world. So let me start with some assumptions on high-performance IOLs. What are these? These are the IOLs that give a little bit more than a monofocal IOL. So those that are called like enhanced monofocal IOLs, the so-called increased range of focus, in the full range of focus IOLs. Just to make it very clear, high-performance IOLs are not the spherical aberration compensating IOLs like the aspheric profiles for monofocal IOLs we have, as well as the purely toric ones. Another way for talking about the high-performance IOLs, you see all of them included into that rectangle. These are the IOLs I'm referring to. So those giving a little bit, starting from a little bit more to a full range of focus to our patients and the eyes that we implant. My journey with the high-performance IOLs started long ago. You see, I implanted my first one in 1996, and at that time, the percentage of IOLs able to correct presbyopia with implanting was very, very, very small. And you see that through some stages and steps over my career, this number that you see on the right actually is increasing. The more these IOLs get performing, the more these were integrated into my practice. And to be today in 2020, having a conversion rate to high performance IOLs around 92 to 95%. And the figure that you can see here now is the percentage of eyes that I'm implanting on a routine way. And again, if you consider what is the inside of the rectangle, again, the high performance IOLs, right now in 2021, I'm implanting roughly 95% of them, of which 68% are toric. So why am I saying this? Because to get these numbers, you must be committed, and the entire mindset of yourself as the surgeon, but also of the practice, of the staff, of your marketing strategy, of the community, and as the final, also the mindset of the patient should be very addressed in that lane. Try to give the patients the best solution for them, and for most of the patients, the best solution is even the wider range of visual freedom possible. We said that high performance IOLs are those really increasing the range of vision. So in a perfect world, if price and performances would not be an issue, we would virtually have 100 of patients receiving them. This we know that doesn't happen, but at least in my practice, all patients earn a chance to receive a high-performance IOL unless there is a reason not to implant it. So what we do is never upgrade the patients to the high-performance IOLs. We are more oriented on the downgrading process if there's any reason not to implant a high-performance IOL. And we said that not all patients can receive a high-performance IOL, maybe because they have an issue or maybe because they just don't want to have their spectacle freedom. But again, the concept that I think is at the basis of all of it is that each single patient stands alone and each single patient has a commitment from ourselves to receive their best personalized solution, even if it is a monofocal IOL. There is a huge difference in between your mindset or your practice mindset if you are oriented to high performance IOLs or if you're not. And you see here what a practice oriented does opposite to a practice that is not really oriented. So when you are not really involved, you do patient selection, actually practices that are oriented in high performance IOLs do IOL selection. Practice is not very oriented to talk about patient inclusion, while, as we were saying earlier, when you are oriented in this world, you are more considering the exclusion of the patients because you are given for granted that most of them can really receive some sort of a presbyopic correcting IOL. Practices who are already, in the game, in the HP IOLs world, try to do as many exams and as many diagnostics before consulting the patients, so they can already screen them and they can already select before consulting the patients if they are good or not good candidates to high performance IOLs. This is why in most of these practices, actually, there is not a real conversion. There's just a transition from the idea of giving patients spectacle independence and bringing the patients to that point. And practices where the entire team is aligned to high performance IOLs, actually they do all, everybody can talk about these IOLs. There are not specific teams dedicated. Even the receptionist or the phone operator knows how to say, what to do, how to promote these IOLs in a very consistent way. Practices that are not very mindset oriented try to focus more on the advantages and disadvantages, while we learned that to be more successful, it is more important to focus on the values that these IOLs may give the patients. And if you are really want to be involved in this kind of matter, you should never consider costs as barriers, because costs in this field are opportunities for you as a businessman or as the owner of your practice to increase your revenues, but most important, opportunities for your patients to get a better solution than a monofocal IOL. And as we said before, you have also to know what kind of lenses, what kind of high performance IOLs you are dealing with and you are going to implant in your patients, because there is not a single one that can meet all the expectations. So each single high performance IOL has a different performance in the way they deliver spectacle independence, but also they have different levels and different kinds of drawbacks or compromises to provide their own spectacle independence. And this is why it's so important to know exactly all the advantages and disadvantages of the IOL you are dealing with. And the expectations of the patients is obviously the focus that the surgeon, the staff, the practice has to go to. And we know that patients have just a perception of what we are dealing, what we are talking about. And as well as in the financial equation where value is benefits over costs, for presbyopic correcting IOLs, for high performance IOLs, the value is the level of spectacle independence that these IOLs can provide over price, the physical cost, and the compromises that these IOLs may imply. And you can read here some of the benefits and some of the compromises associated. And again, we said that there are categories of IOLs, and it is very important to make a real distinction on the range of distances that these IOLs may provide. So starting from monofocal IOLs down to the full range of focus IOLs, the range of vision, the range of focus that these IOLs are giving are obviously increasing. If you see this matter from the opposite side, that is the quality of vision, or better, the night dysphotopsia profile, you see the arrow goes exactly in the opposite direction. So from the full range of focus that provide more spectacle independence up to the monofocal IOLs, the compromise in terms of dysphotopsia gets lower and lower. And this is exactly the focus of the problem, because not all the patients are the same. And each one of the patient, of our patients, may have something different. You see here some, issues or some points. There is not a presentation long enough to list all of them, and these are just triggering points. But you see how, for instance, lifestyle, daily activities, the status of the lens, the type of compromise that the patient is willing to accept, the cost of the procedure, all of these are variables that make each single patient as unique. And what we really need to do as ophthalmologists to really meet the patient expectations is understanding from the patients the most important point. What kind of benefits really justify and outweigh the costs, where the cost is the price, but also the compromises that patients are going to pay for getting their spectacle independence. And this is why it's kind of important, is key in the process of selecting the best solution for each single individual, going through the motivations, going through the expectations, going through the knowledge of what kind of distances patients are working with or playing with, and all of these give the final picture, the final evaluation of what a potential patient may need and go in a specific direction. So just to summarize and conclude, there are some key points to really giving the patients the best individual solution based upon their status, but also expectations. And first of all, the mindset of the practice is critical. As I said, everybody should speak the same language. Everybody should refer to the IOLs the same way. There must be no, contradictory statements or so. And the entire staff and practice should really work in a single way to try to provide the patients exactly what they want to have. You have to know your high performance IOLs as well in the best possible way. You have to know your patients, as we said earlier. And finally, most important, you have to meet their expectations, because only by meeting the expectation, you will have happy and satisfied patients. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Francesco. First of all, of course, you're in practice so many years, practicing premium IOL surgeries for so many years. I know you just opened your new state-of-the-art center in Milano, which I can't wait to visit when the COVID pandemic is going down, of course. And all those tips and tricks are fantastic. But I can imagine that the public is overwhelmed by the information you're giving right now. So my question to you, first of all, is for people who want to start with multifocal IOLs, which first steps do you think are the most important for them to take? Which hurdles do they have to undertake to get more involved into multifocal or premium IOLs, as we're talking about now?
Well, for those who are starting, obviously the easiest thing to do is starting from the best patients, the best eye, and the most motivated patients, because in that case, you will definitely end up with a happy case. So I would say very low astigmatism preoperatively, a good tear film, and possibly not a refractive lens replacement patient, because these patients are more challenging. I would definitely choose a patient with cataract. And then that's a good point, because among all the categories of IVs that you have seen, some of them are more forgiving in terms of compromises, but they also deliver less spectacle independence. However, these are probably the easiest patients to start with, or the easiest lenses to start to implant, just because worst case scenario, you will not get significant complaints, but just the fact that the patient is not completely spectacle independent. Once you have your experience with more forgiving IOLs, then you can dive into the trifocal and full range of vision lenses that are a little bit more challenging in terms of going, exactly on spot as regards the outcome. They are a little bit more challenging in terms of what to really communicate to the patients as regards the quality of vision that they will have at night. But this requires a little bit more of training for your staff as well. This requires a little bit more of, post-operative care, post-operative, interaction with those patients who are not fully happy with the results. So start with the easy cases, start with the maybe, as I said, the extended range of focus lenses, not the full range of focus, and have your experience with them, and then you move on.
Thank you, Francesco. I know that Pavel is managing the questions from the audience. Maybe, Pavel, you have some questions lying up there for Francesco?
There is a question. So did we understand well that you basically offer the best as your standard, as a starting line, and then you, because of some reasons, sometimes downgrade the patients? So I assume that there are some financial reasons to downgrade perhaps, and medical ones. Can you tell us a little bit more about the medical reasons where you most commonly downgrade the patients?
Yeah, exactly. You're right on spot, Pavel. There are many reasons for downgrading. The most important, at least in my practice, is not financial, because in my practice, we only have private patients. So those patients getting into the practice are already committed to invest on their eyes, their vision. So the reason for downgrading in most of the cases is the patient is not suitable for a full range of vision either. Maybe the patient has, I'm not saying significant, problems, but maybe a patient with an early epithelial retinal membrane is not the best candidate, or a patient has some sort of retinal pigment epithelium irregularity in the posterior pole, or the patient has some sort of irregular astigmatism as well. So these are the patients who may be downgraded in the most of the cases.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Francesco, but with some of these extended depth of focus lenses, the limitations are not that strict as the limitations with trifocal lenses, correct?
You're exactly right, Pavel. And this is why in a practice that is kind of premium, as I was telling you, we can have a conversion rate to high performance IOLs around 95% of the cases, because if patients do not have significant problems in terms of finance, those cases were really contraindicated are not more than 1/20. So it's the figure of a 95% conversion rate that I have now.
Okay, understand. But as Eric said, I had my birthday yesterday, and I celebrated with a very special case, with a surgery of a young girl, 21-year-old. She was blind for one eye for quite a long time. I did a corneal tattoo for her for cosmetic reasons about a year ago. And during the last few weeks, unfortunately, she developed a perforating corneal ulcer in her only sighted eye. And she lost the anterior chamber and developed an intumescent cataract. So that was quite a challenging case, but I managed to perform cataract surgery underneath of temporary silicone keratoprosthesis. We stained her anterior capsula with trypan blue and managed to perform laser capsulotomy, which works best in my hands for this intumescent lens. I implanted an IOL and then performed a transplantation. So she's a very young lady, healthy retina, but I just used the standard monofocal IOL. Would you perhaps, or some of you, think about the EDOF lens in this case?
Personally, I would not.
Yeah, too many aberrations anyhow, correct?
I would just stay safe. That would be a downgrade in my practice.
Yeah, but it was my way of celebration when I kept in mind that perhaps I could do something better for her than monofocal IOL, but I decided to implant monofocal. And by the way, I phoned her this morning and she's very happy. She already starts to read the bigger letters. So that was a nice gift for her and myself.
I think that this patient is going to be so grateful for you for what you did in terms of rehabilitation that she will not really care about wearing spectacles.
Okay, thank you. And I see Arthur Cummings managed to join us. Arthur, welcome. I know you were at the meeting, so thank you very much to join us at this moment.
Thank you, Pavel. It's my pleasure. I look forward to it. I'm sorry I missed, I think, Francesco's talk.
Well, I give you a private view.
Thank you.
So I think we can conclude this topic. Francesco, thank you very much for your contribution. And let's go on with Shiraz Daya's talk about the real classification and how we see it in the future, how we can classify these high-end lenses. So please, Shiraz, share your PowerPoint and your presentation with us.
Great, thank you. Let me try and get rid of this thing here. Well, thanks very much, Pavel, for asking AECOS to be involved in this. It's a great privilege to be here and to join you at your festival. I attended a few years ago and had a good time there with colleagues. Except the drive from Prague to Zlin was quite something. At rapid pace with Czech limousine drivers. Anyway, I'm going to talk about a new language on these advanced technology IOLs. I'm just trying to figure out how to get rid of this thing here. Okay, good. These are my financial disclosures, and I'm involved with a lot of different companies who also manufacture implants. Now, what I'm going to be speaking about is the rationale for a new language, which Francesco's already alluded to. Our proposal at AECOS at this moment in time, and where we stand with our progress. So when we use language, we need to use language that is common to all stakeholders. And the stakeholders are mainly patients. I mean, that's what we are in the business of. We became doctors to look after patients. We're the eye surgeons. At the same time, we need the manufacturers, the industry to work with us to provide tools of our trade. So if we speak a common language, then we'll get somewhere. We can compare apples with apples and pears with pears. Now, there are a lot of implants out there, and they just keep increasing. So for the person who's entering this area, it must be incredibly confusing. Actually, it's confusing for people already established in this area because you don't really get the full picture of what these lenses are about. And you can dabble and then get burnt and not use the lens anymore. And you can be burnt not because the lens is a problem, but because maybe the selection of the patient was a problem. Anyway, we're talking about one variable in this whole context, and that's the lens. So lens performance is, as I say, one variable. Before I go on to that, there are other variables that one needs to consider, and we've already discussed that. The reason why you would not use a high-performance lens in a corneal transplant patient is because corneal optics matter too. You know, there are a lot of different aspects of this: asphericity, regularity, and so on. The postoperative pupil size is another variable. The axial length of the eye can influence the conoidal stern. In a longer eye, you've got a thin conoidal stern. And then there's this final one called neuroadaptation, which we rely on for patients to become accustomed to how lenses work. And one of the things that everybody talks about with high-performance lenses is this photopsia, photic phenomenon. It can be, and there are two aspects of it. the magnitude of it, which relates to how much it disrupts people functionally. In terms of lens performance, you've really got, as Francesco described, two different categories. You either have increased range of focus by comparison to a monofocal, or you've got full range of focus where patients are completely spectacle independent in both eyes monocularly. So what prompted us to start thinking about this? Well, actually, I have to say that I personally got very tired of hearing the word EDOF used very liberally by everybody. And then, a lot of companies, because one company did very well with one lens, calling it EDOF, became a buzzword. Everybody came on board and said, well, we have one too. Well, it's interesting, that company lens has sort of gone out of favor now. It's people have fallen out of love with it. But there are other ones out there that are trying to take pole position. Now, there are a few reasons why they all want to be a Me Too EDOF. One is that EDOF lenses are perceived as more forgiving. It's not true. The subjective responses by patients are influenced, as I've already mentioned, by some of these other aspects like preoperative counseling that Francesco talked about, managing expectations, neuroadaptation, and patient choice in terms of what problems they want to live with. My own personal views, I don't even know why people bother with increased range of focus or EDOF, but that's my own personal view. I just use full range of focus lenses in all patients. And that's the subject for another discussion at another time. So our role as doctors and working as opinion leaders in the industry is to reduce confusion to patients in particular, also amongst our colleagues. And in the end, it goes down to delivery. What do patients want? Well, patient satisfaction equals outcomes minus the expectations. And we influence both those. The expectations we have to manage. The outcomes are based on our patient selection and the implants that we choose for them based on their eye and how their eye is performing, what the corneal optics are like, and so on. From the patient's point of view, if you ask them the question, what would you like? Of course, they're going to say, we want complete freedom from glasses. It may not always be possible because there's, as Francesco's mentioned, there's a bit of an exchange here. You can get maximum range of focus, but you might have a few dysphotopsias that you have to live with for a while, and eventually they go away. But what are these adverse effects and how are they going to affect individual personalities? That's another issue. So the question is, what are patients willing to compromise? And it's difficult to know without any point of reference. So existing terminology is a problem. There are abbreviations like PCIOL. I have to say, I got really confused when people talk about PCIOLs, because I came from the time when we were converting, when we were doing anterior chamber lenses and posterior chamber lenses in extra cut. And the ACIOL was an anterior chamber lens and a PCIOL was a posterior chamber lens. Now in the 21st century, almost 30 more or plus years later, we're talking about using the same abbreviation for presbyopia correcting lenses. But are we correcting presbyopia? We're not correcting presbyopia, we're increasing range of focus. Premium IOL, I suppose, yes, premium because you're going to pay a premium price. That sort of sends the wrong message in my view. I like the term high performance lenses because that's what they are. Custom lens replacement is a good one because we're customizing treatment to suit the patient. But if we start using too many terms, it's confusing for patients and it's confusing for us as well. There are multifocal lenses, trifocal, extended depth focus, even wavefront optimized lenses, which I think is a really bad term. So in terms of parameters, for the patient and the ophthalmologist, we are really interested in the range of focus. What can we deliver? And what is the compromise in terms of photopsias? For us as individual ophthalmologists, when do we really care about the mechanism of action? We care because the mechanism of action influences photopsias. So it comes back, but do patients really care whether it's a diffractive lens or a refractive lens or an EDOF with a chromatic add-on to save energy? They don't want to know about all those things. It's like buying a computer. Do you really care what kind of process is in the computer? I just want to make sure I can make videos, I can do my emails, make PowerPoint presentations, and so on. Patients are the same. They just want to know what it's going to deliver and what to expect, and that has been managed. So telling them how the lens works is just not, for me, it doesn't work. So we at AECOS decided we would embark on this project to try and classify lenses in the 21st century, in this moment in time, in 2020, 2021. We started the project last year, and we contacted a variety of companies, asking them what presbyopia high performance lenses they have that were commercially available. And for each, could they provide the mechanism of action and also provide clinical data to support the function of the lenses, ideally data that they would submit to a regulatory authority like the FDA, or where they would require CE marking. And if they didn't have any of that, to send into literature or a presentation. So it's good everybody responded, but there was a variety of information provided. There's the data provided was mostly good, but not completely compliant. And many of them were slide decks and marketing hype, which was confusing. So we couldn't really use that data. The type of information we were really looking for was in this sort of range, talking about, we want to compare against monofocal. One company provided good data, and since then we've built on that. We want to know the performance of the lenses at distance, intermediate, and near, and did they quantify the dysphotopsias, which we divided into starbursts, halos, and glare, because that's exactly how they presented their data to the FDA. And I'm not going to talk about that too much. So going now in terms of classification, what language have we decided we want to start to use? Well, EDOF is a bad term. It's borrowed from photography. It stands for extended depth of field. And here we're calling it extended depth of focus. Even ANSI provided a standard for EDOF, which is really confusing. What they really mean is increased range of focus. Working from first principles, extended depth of field, as I say, applies to photography, and you can get extended depth of field for those photographers out there by decreasing the aperture of your optical system. You get increased range of focus, right? And if you were to zoom out, you would also get increased or extended depth of field. So really, if you're going to use EDOF, in my view, the only lenses that qualify are the small aperture lenses that provide true extended depth of field. And should be reserved for these type of lenses. That's an extra focus and the IC8 from AECOS. So we decided to go by functionality for the point of view from the patient. So we go by range of focus. There's either increased range of focus or full range of focus. And they each have their own different mechanisms of action. That comes secondary. What we must not do is confuse mechanisms of action with whether it's EDOF or increased range of focus or full range of focus. That's separate. That influences dysphotopsias. And there are a variety of mechanisms of action. There's accommodative, small aperture, diffractive, zone refractive. There's even combined, where they've got the so-called EDOF principle, which I'm still scratching my head about, combined with the diffractive to give a full range of correction. Well, it'd be great if they use similar language to ourselves. So a full range of focus, really, the preliminary definition that we have at the moment is monocularly provides spectacle independence. How do you define spectacle independence? Well, on a practical basis, can they read a newspaper? Can they use a computer? And can they drive, preferably at night? And the question is, what numbers do we need for them to fulfill this criteria? Is it 85%, 90%, 95%? And that's something that we do need to discuss amongst ourselves at AECOS. So these are the lenses that we've classified so far. In terms of being full range of focus, we need to analyze it a bit more carefully based on data. And this is the increased range of focus lenses that are currently available in the market. And I think there's one more that just got added recently from Rayner, and they just got FDA approval today, I gather. So there's more being added to the list. Quantifying the impact of photic phenomena is a difficult one because it's so subjective. And it varies from patients to patients in terms of their how anal they might be, how detailed they might be, and how obsessive compulsive they might be in terms of clarity of vision. From my point of view, if they can drive, that's the main thing. Then that's the biggest hurdle to cross. but we are using glare, halo, starburst, and other to classify them. The committee at AECOS is illustrated here. There's myself, Eric Mertens, Francesco Coronas, Joaquin Fernandez from Spain, and David Shahnazaran, who's my associate with us at Center for Sight. He's doing all the the legwork of putting the data together in a manner that we can try and analyze and come up with some sort of solution. Then this is what he has come up with, which we've now sent to the industry again, saying, please fill in the blanks. And what we're looking at is uncorrected distance visual acuity, intermediate acuity, near acuity, and then the combination of the two, uncorrected vision at distance, intermediate, and near, and what percentage of patients monocularly get these levels of correction. And then how satisfied are they, and do they require any secondary surgical intervention related to the properties of implants? In other words, how many required explants because patients didn't like it? So as I said, the problem we've encountered is we've got very little information that we really need, and we're going back asking the industry again to please fill in the blanks so we can move forward. So our goal at AECOS, in conclusion, is to make terminology understandable to everyone, specifically patients. And again, if the industry, ourselves, and patients were to use the same language, we'd come a long way and we could build this industry even further. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Shiraz. I must congratulate you on this enormous task to try to classify these lenses, because everyone is confused, not only the industry, not only us, but also, of course, patients. And I think this is an enormous work which will help our field to advance in the near future, making it easier for anybody, for everybody, actually. So I'll ask Pavel whether there are questions from the audience to ask to Shiraz.
Yeah, there is first my comment. I would like to really congratulate Shiraz on excellent talk. And I personally am really convinced that it should be the Society of Ophthalmologists, eye surgeons, to set up the terminology and the rules to bridge the eye surgeons, industry and the patients as well, and to avoid confusion. And it's really a great work you did here and your committee at AECOS. And I think AECOS is really doing very, very important work here. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And we have two questions. One question is about terminology. What does it mean, social range of vision, which is sometimes used by industry in relationship with some of the EDOF lenses? I think social range of vision, they mean just the distance and intermediate vision, correct? Or do you know any more precise definition?
Yeah, I have no idea. This is a problem, isn't it? Because we've got, I've never heard this terminology before, but it is being used. And let's call a spade a spade. It's for marketing hype. And all it does is confuses us ophthalmologists, and we in turn confuse patients. And then we get nowhere. And when you give patients too much choice sometimes and you confuse them, they don't choose anything.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely.
So I think the manufacturers are sometimes doing themselves a disservice and shooting themselves in the foot, because really it's not just about their business and domination by themselves. It's the overall business. If this becomes more acceptable, everybody wins. Patients in particular will win, but so will manufacturers.
Perfect. And the second question, Shiraz, is should we classify these IOLs based on the optical principles defined on optical bench or on their actual clinical performance? And I think you already answered that, but once again.
I mean, I think and that's why we need to separate all these issues. So working from first principles, what are we trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve maximum spectral independence for patients. But at the same time, as Francesco very, very eloquently illustrated, there's a trade-off. And the question is, what are patients happy to trade off? It's very hard, actually, for them to understand what the trade-off is without simulating it. And there is a device, I can't remember what it's called, a Symvis, that Susanna Marcos has developed, which does simulate the vision. I think it's fantastic because it actually shows you how you can neuroadapt in just 15, 20 minutes. But that's about the only way we can simulate things for them in reality and see how sensitive they themselves will be. But we can have a discussion with them and we can manage their expectations. And I don't use anything but trifocal lenses in about 95% of patients. But I tell them they may well get halos, they may well get these issues, but they will go away. And if they're absolutely adamant they don't want anything like it, then I won't put them in. I won't put them in patients who have contraindications. But we come in the same way Francesco described. Patients come in, and we pitch them the best possible lenses they can get, maximum range of focus. And if we downgrade them all the way down to a monofocal lens, or maybe an enhanced monofocal lens, like the IsoPure lens. And I have access to that, and that's what I use. I don't know if it makes a huge amount of difference. We have monofocal lenses that do the same thing. So that's what I personally do. So it's range of focus, mechanism comes secondary, and mechanism influences photic phenomenon. But we got to start with what's the range of focus that we can provide patients. So we are classifying based on mechanism, but that comes way down the list.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it was clear.
Great insights, Shiraz, as always. And thank you again for this incredible job. And I think we can have a paper out of this end of this year, maybe beginning of next year. So let's work together further on this project. So thanks again, Shiraz. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, I'm going to introduce Arthur Cummings from Dublin, Ireland. And probably he has the most difficult task or difficult subject to cover, because how can we give the industry insight that is very important to bring in a new classification of these lenses? Because of course they have a huge marketing machine behind them, because they want to sell their lenses, of course, because they are better than the other industry leaders. So how can we make them understand that this classification will help them get a larger market share? So actually extending the pond so that more patients can benefit from this technology, and not by confusing them, so push them away. So Arthur, I'm very curious to learn what you have to say about this.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, it's interesting. My talk is mostly about, I thought we need to look at new ways of classifying in addition to what AECOS were doing. And I also was on a different call right now, so I thought I wouldn't make this call. So I'm hoping Pavel can play my PowerPoint. It's only 7 minutes long, just under 7 minutes. And then we can have the discussion. And what I'm trying to put across with a PowerPoint or with my discussion is that if we have a terminology that's so strong and makes so much sense to us, then it doesn't really matter what industries say. We'll use the terms we want to use, and they'll just simply comply. But let's listen to the talk quickly. It's not very long, and then we can have the discussion. Thanks, Pavel.
Pavel, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you about a new classification of presbyopic correcting IOLs and how do we get industry to buy in. These are my financial disclosures, and I refer to Vivior during this talk, where I am a member of the MAB. There are many designs of presbyopic correcting IOLs. Some are refractive, others diffractive, and there are new terms that many are finding confusing. Ophthalmologists are having issues with understanding the IOLs available to patients, and patients, of course, are having even more trouble understanding their options. There is a disconnect with the terminology. For argument's sake, a full range of focus. What does that mean? What does that mean to the ophthalmologist? What does it mean to the -6 myopic patient? And what does it mean to the +3 hyperope? The -6 patient who preoperatively can pluck her eyebrows in the mirror will not think that she got a full range of focus lens if afterwards she cannot do that. Extended depth of focus. What does that mean in practical terms? So ophthalmologists and patients alike require more specific information that is simple to understand. How will the solution impact my personal situation? What won't I be able to do after my treatment? For example, will I still be able to pluck my eyebrows when I'm 5 centimeters away from the mirror? Instead of using new terms that may be deemed meaningless by some, it is suggested to use terminology that is more useful. Most presbyopia-correcting IOLs have already been used by ophthalmologists across Europe. It therefore stands to reason that a questionnaire may provide very valuable information to surgeons and patients alike. I've called this classification the RDO classification, the range, dysphotopsia, and offset. So the range refers to when the lens is at emmetropia, how near can the eye see? In terms of dysphotopsia, subjectively, how does this lens compare to known IOLs, like a monofocal or a modern trifocal? And then, if you were to achieve reading vision with this lens, what would the refraction need to be? And I've called that the offset. This example is for a monofocal IOL. So the range of vision is distance vision only, the dysphotopsia is negligible, and the amount of offset required in order to achieve reading vision is minus 1.5 or more for target. So this classification lands up being R5, D1, 1.5. An example for a refractive EDOF lens. So this patient has distance and intermediate vision with minimal near vision. Dysphotopsia is negligible. The offset required to achieve reading is minus 0.50. This classification is R2, D1, 0.5. And now an example of a trifocal EDOF. So in this case, it's a full range of vision. The dysphotopsia is more than a trifocal, and there's no offset required. So this lands up being a R1, D4, 0. You may have noticed that the last column of satisfaction has not been used in the classification because it is too subjective, and secondly, it depends on patient education and understanding of the targets that you are trying to achieve. What would happen if we used Viveo data post-operatively? This would allow even more accuracy and less subjectivity. The data is obtained from a monitor on your glasses, so it's a wearable. It provides a personalized defocus curve, and the data is then processed and analyzed by artificial intelligence-based algorithms to generate the relevant reports used to select the appropriate solution for patients. So how may it look if we used Viveo for classification? So for brand X, you can see all distances including up to 50 centimeters, negligible dysphotopsia, and a minus 0.50 offset required would be R50, D1, 0.5. For brand Y, we have a lens that can see at all distances, including up to 40. The dysphotopsia is more than usual, and the amount of offset required is nothing. So this lands up being R40, D4, 0. The classification can be even more specific with Viveo. The range can be broken down into reading and near, and where is the best intermediate vision. So in these examples, it's a 35 centimeters for reading and 60 centimeters for intermediate. The dysphotopsia is like a typical trifocal, and there's no offset required to achieve reading. So now the IOL classification may look like this. Range, near 35, intermediate 60, D3, 0 offset required for this specific IOL, and the ranges and distances are the collective of all the data collected. So it's much like ULIP for IOL A constants. Both surgeons and their patients could make better decisions with this information collected through questionnaires sent to colleagues, thereby benefiting from our collective knowledge and clinical experience. How may industry view this? Well, they will likely adopt these criteria, as this is what surgeons and patients may be asking for. Does it really matter and make a difference if they don't comply? This is how we may refer to it. And this independent collective wisdom may possibly become the way that ophthalmologists assess new IOLs rather than trying to understand the company's marketing message. I really hope that you are challenged to contribute to our collective knowledge so that we land up with a more workable solution and classification. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arthur, for your insights. And actually, that was what was I referring to, because our patients are our clients, but we are the clients of the industry. The patients are not the clients of the industry, but they cannot communicate with each other because they do not understand each other. And actually, we need to tell the industry what we need to benefit our patient satisfaction or to augment our patient satisfaction. And by doing this, and by introducing with the Vivior higher level of confidence or result-oriented surgery, then we can achieve our goals. So I would like to ask the full panel what their opinions are, how we can influence the industry in streamlining what they do and making it easier for us to talk to patients and choose the right lens instead of marketing again and again and again and coming up with EDOF classification names, whatever. How can we convince them in an easy way that to make it life easier for everyone? So maybe Arthur, it was your talk, so you can go first.
Thanks, Eric. You know, we're all members of the RSA, and I've seen a number of forum topics with the RSA where people get quite worked up with the new terminology and the new terms, and someone saying this isn't an EDOF and this isn't the diffractive lens, and people get quite defensive. And the one thing that people normally start asking, and I immediately get the answer, I know what the person's referring to, is when someone starts saying, well, this for particular lens, you say it gives me this increased range of focus, but at what level must I offset it refractively to be able to read it? And then the person says, well, you have to go to 150. And then in my mind, I know that that range of focus is very, very minimal. We all know, all I need to do is ask Shiraz when I want to use a new lens. Shiraz, I want to use this lens. Where does this photoptic curve fit in? No, it's just like panoptics, so like fine vision. And I immediately know how patients are going to adjust to it. So I think we collectively have a huge amount of information already. And if you think that we're doing power calculations based on ULIB, which is a collective database, and now I'm suggesting what we do is we look at potentially choosing our IOL design based on the same thing. Initially, it's just our common knowledge. Eventually, with things like Vivior or devices that can help you measure more accurately, you can be more specific so that you know this particular lens gives me this performance at these ranges. Typically, it's going to vary, obviously, whether it's a +24 lens or a +12 lens, and depending on the power of the lens and the optics of the eye. But even then, at least you have a better idea of how this lens performs. What you don't know at that point is exactly what the patient needs. But you know, at least we're getting closer to meeting objectively with what the lens can provide and what the patient is seeking.
Yeah, thank you, Arthur. Shiraz, maybe, what is your viewpoint on this? You're muted, Shiraz.
Microphone.
So, as we've already discussed, not every patient will get the dysphotopsias that we're discussing. There's a percentage that get them. And in my mind, I think, this is my own perspective, I think we're doing patients a disservice by not providing with the opportunity to give them a full range of focus. Take my brother, he had his cataract done a month ago. And I warned him, he's an ENT surgeon, and he said, I can't operate on babies anymore. I got tracheas, it's so narrow, I can't see because of this cataract. So I said, right, fine, I'll do your surgery. And he wanted the same lens as his wife, which is a trifocal. So I thought, you're going to be careful with halos and so on. Anyway, he got the surgery done. The next day he was driving. He said, I got no halos. I don't know what you were talking about. None. I said, none. Not even a ring around lights. No, nothing. Now, his standpoint was he had a cataract. So everything was an improvement. He was also minus 10. So where he was coming from and where he got to, by comparison, this was unbelievably good. So there's so many variables. How do we deal with that? It's difficult and it's complicated. And that's, so I just try to keep my life simple. I offer trifocals to everybody. And so far I've not removed any, but I have had one or two that have taken ages to adjust, sometimes 18 months. Some don't completely lose the halos, but they manage, they can drive, they can do everything, and they just ignore them. So and I feel I've actually done them a great service by giving them a full range of focus. And actually I have less headaches too, because to try and explain to them this issue of one eye's offset and so on, I have to, maybe I'm an impatient sort of guy, but I just find it very, very difficult to handle one patient to another, and I'm drained by the end of the day. So I just try and keep my life simple. I'm drained at the end of the day anyway. So I just keep my life simple, and I just do a full range of focus lenses in every patient I can.
Thank you for your viewpoint, Shiraz. And I like what you're saying, that not every lens gives the same dysphotopy as with different patients. It still is unknown. The brain is playing a huge part in this as well. So, Francesco, what's your opinion on this?
Well, Eric, I think we are facing a complete change in the way that we are doing this kind of procedures. And I'd like to give you an example, as well as Allergan boomed with Botox when they moved from the therapeutic side to the aesthetic. I really think that the companies should move on and try to move this procedure from the rehabilitation of a cataract procedure to the cosmetic / functional side of something that is going to improve their lives. And I think that the comparison between plastic surgery and this part of ophthalmology has a lot of makes a lot of sense because for plastic surgery, results of, for instance, the blepharoplasty are not the same in all patients, and there is that variable that is more related to the human being, and this is the first time we see this kind of variables in ophthalmology. So, as well as my plastic surgeon is telling me that some of their patients are complaining after an aesthetic plastic procedure, but the percentage of patients who are really going back to surgery to an enhancement or a touch-up, it's minimal. The same should be our way for doing with these patients. So leaving the door open to potential exchange of IOL or enhancements and all of that. But in most of the cases, we will see these patients just enjoying the advantages and giving less and less weight on the small compromises that are associated to these IOLs. So I'm very much like Shiraz from that point of view. So I really think that if you are dealing with difficult patients, as it may happen, but you are dealing in the right way, you're going to get a happy patient, even if the patient is not going to be 100% happy. So the percentage rate of patients really struggling, you and your staff, or willing to, go to a replacement surgery is going to be minimal as soon as you are honest and transparent, and as soon as you are going to partner with the patients in the same way that plastic and aesthetic surgeons do with their own patients. This is why I really like this comparison.
I like your comparison too, Francesco. I never thought about plastic surgery and what we do in our daily lives as being, but you're absolutely right. That's with plastic surgery, not every patient or customer is satisfied with the results of their plastic surgery, although there was an improvement. So, but it's a subjective one. Which improvement is the patient looking for? That was Shiraz was saying during his presentation, that the satisfaction is the outcome minus the expectation of the patient. That's also the plastic surgery, the same thing. So let's go to Pavel now for I think the closing remarks of this session. For sure, he has some questions to ask or some questions to to drop to us from the audience. Pavel, please.
I would start with your question, Eric. I think you asked absolutely correctly. What can we do to clean this storm in terminology in premium IOLs? And I think number one, we need to bring this topic into the attention. And you all just did it. I think that's important. That's step number one. Step number two is to really create a terminology which makes sense, which is as simple as possible, which would unite the ophthalmologists, industry, and patients as well. And as soon as we create that, and I think AECOS showed a really, great interest to do it by creating a subcommittee for this topic. So it's really something which firmly shows that, there is an interest, will, and the energy to solve it. So as soon as we find a classification which is simple, we should market it among our colleagues and the patients as well. And I'm pretty sure the industry will adapt also, even though they will still do some marketing efforts on their own ways on top of that, but it's going to be adapted, hopefully. And I think today, the AECOS session, which you all created, just starts this process in a really, public way among our colleagues ophthalmologists. And I believe we do succeed with that.
That's the goal, Pavel. Thank you very much. That's what AECOS is standing for. So we want to advance our patient satisfaction and by bringing better technology and also explaining better to our patients what we are doing and what we can mean for them in their daily life. We actually want to advance their daily life by doing this surgery and not pushing them away by using terminology which nobody understands. So do you have some final comments for this session, Pavel?
I would like to thank you all for creating this session on high performance, high-tech IOLs, and all the presentations, contributions, and for your time. And I'm sure we will continue working on this topic in AECOS, and have a nice evening.
This was a very nice discussion, and we definitely need to lower the confusion caused by current high-tech IOL nomenclature. I would like to invite you to enjoy over 30 case reports at this online conference, which you can find below. I hope you both enjoy and learn. Have a nice weekend.